Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Pink Mike Leo Confessions. It's been a while, so thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about why the holidays are a great time to talk about estate planning with your family, with your friends, and those loved ones we have to see once a year. Really, the focus today is try to really convey how important it is to bring up these topics amongst family members, and what better way than the holiday. So, as the holiday season is among us, we now know that we're going to be able to see families, spend quality time with them. And often than not, we see family members that live far away, or perhaps we only see them once in a great while. Now, spending quality time with family is great, but it's also a great time to really focus on some of the things that are important, that maybe are kind of uncomfortable topics, or things that maybe people don't talk about as openly as we should. So that's really one of the things that I wanted to really brief you guys on today. As you know, I'm Stephanie Garces, owner of Garces Law Firm in Arlington Heights, where we help parents prepare for the unexpected. And we actually are helping people secure their legacy at the same time. So the holidays are here, and personally, I really, really like this time of year because things are a little bit slower. We can sort of cozy up with family, and really with getting in tune with some of the holiday traditions that we all have. And so it's really great to just spend time together and enjoy meals together. Many times we don't get to do that during the year with especially family members that are far away, or ones we don't see very often. So, as always, it's really important to think about protecting your family. Every possible step in life is something we can't predict, right? So sometimes it's good to think about these things. And with our families and loved ones, we can actually avoid some of the challenges that people face in life by just putting together a basic estate plan. So many people often overlook this easy way to make their lives easier in the long run, and to really have the proper documentation in place. So in today's episode, I'm going to cover a couple of things, but as I mentioned, it's going to be why the holidays are a great time to talk about estate planning. And you're probably wondering, I don't want to talk about that, because why would I want to talk about that of all the things I have to talk about? Well, yes, that's true, but we can always prepare for the unexpected, and that's part of my job. So, how you decide to approach estate planning is really up to you. It can be more of a formal conversation. People have like family meetings where they talk about these things. It could be like a casual request. That's totally fine. Really, just to address some of the family members that really just haven't taken the time to do this sort of thing. Some people put this off. I can't tell you how many times people put this off, but it's a great time to really just try to connect with family about this topic. Now, today I'm going to share the most crucial estate planning documents to talk about during the holidays, how to get started, and really what the differences are about them, so that you can talk about them intelligently with your family. So, most of all, I want to thank everyone really for taking the time in advance to talk with your family, your parents, your spouse about putting something in place. Really, one of the greatest gifts we can give each other is really preparing for unexpected situations. And getting some documentation for estate planning in order is really one of the most underrated and very valuable gifts that you can give your family. So, as we know, life is unexpected. Unexpected situations do happen. So, when they don't have proper documentation in place, this can really cause stress. It can cause uncertainty. It can cause confusion. And quite frankly, it can cause a lot of family drama. So, it really makes it more difficult for people. For example, many people look to Google or online to get forms, but the forms are not just a way to say, I'm done, I got it online. Plenty of people will say to me, well, I've already gotten this in place, I got something online, I'm good, I'm covered. That is not necessarily true. When you get something online, it could certainly not be proper, meaning it doesn't actually cover what it should cover. Really, depending on the state as well, there are very nuances in the law. There's certain things that you need to have in place to make sure these documents actually uphold, that they're actually valid. In my experience, I've seen online forms be very cheap, easy, but they lack what I prepare, which is essentially the nooks and crannies of everything in your life and actually covering it. So it really leaves you open. It doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. That's kind of silly. Why would someone do that? But it's definitely something people are doing. So something to think about with that is just to talk to family members about the fact that meeting with an attorney has a lot more value than just something you find online. For one, we can certainly cater to the person and whatever their needs are. Every person is different. Everyone has different assets, different family dynamics. So those are the types of things that an attorney can handle, like myself, and an online form or an online robot won't. They cannot anticipate things that are in your particular scenario. So that's really why I wanted to bring that up, because a lot of people are misled by the online thing. So it's just good to have an experienced lawyer that can actually kind of craft what you're looking for, really protect your assets, because that's essentially the goal, right? The goal is to make sure that you're protected, everything you worked hard for is protected, and your legacy is also protected, because you obviously have a legacy coming your way no matter who you are. So you certainly want to make sure you protect the assets that you have. Now, an experienced lawyer will also tell you what's required in the state. So depending on where you live, that could really just mean what are the laws in the state when it comes to getting these estate plan docs in order, what makes them valid. Do you need a witness? Does it need to be notarized? Does an attorney have to prepare it? What happens if I have X amount of money in this asset, or I have a house in this state? All of that really comes to light when we do a consultation of what kind of estate plan you actually need. Now, the laws and the regulation in every state are different. You've heard me say this before if you haven't already. I always talk about the fact that you don't actually know what the laws of a particular state are until you meet with an attorney. And again, this is one of the benefits and really a unique opportunity for you to understand what is expected for these documents to have to make them valid, so that when you actually need them, they're usable, not that they're invalid. Uh, and it's really essential to review and revisit your documents every couple years. And for people that already have something in place, there's plenty of people that have a will, they have a trust, they have maybe a land trust, whatever they have, it's in place. But 9 times out of 10, not everyone revisits their documents. They think, oh, I made this back in 1990 and it's fine. Well, newsflash is it's probably not fine. You should always be revisiting your documents, especially if you had a big change in your life. For example, you got married, you had a kid, maybe more than one kid, maybe you got divorced, maybe you bought more property. It's inevitable that in life things are going to change at all phases. There's just different phases of life. Maybe you recently retired, maybe you're planning for retirement. These are all things to consider, because the documents can always be updated within reason, of course. So the person should actually be someone that is competent and can make these decisions. But assuming they are, you can always update your documents. And you certainly want to do that, especially if you have any big changes in your life. Because if you don't update them, then who will? So you really have to go and make sure your documents are timely and they do actually have everything that you want in them, especially that they've accounted for some of the life changes you've experienced. So we're going to dive in a little bit, and we'll begin with the most basic and essential documents that every person should have. One of the things that I talk about often on this show is the powers of attorney. And these are basically really important documents because these are documents that are used while you're living. So they're important because when you go to a hospital, for example, they'll ask for a power of attorney for medical. And that basically is the medical power of attorney that covers who is going to make decisions on your behalf if something happens to you and you cannot make decisions on your behalf. For example, if you have an accident and you're in a coma, or in the event you are on life support, or if there's anything where you just really are not able to make decisions and lack the capacity to do that, the medical power of attorney puts someone in charge that you picked to make those decisions on your behalf. So that's one of the medical power of attorney documents that I talk about a lot on this show. There's also the healthcare power of attorney. That's what they call it. They call medical or healthcare power of attorney. That's another name for it. The one that's completely separate from that is a financial power of attorney. This is the power of attorney for property. That's also the way it's known. That is a document that is different from the other one, but still the same in that you can use it while you're living. This actually allows someone to step into your shoes and really make decisions financially on your behalf if you became incapacitated or something happened where you lack capacity. So these things are very important. There's two stark differences. Now, keep in mind that the powers of attorney do have to be signed. There has to be a witness. There has to be the person that's signing is actually the person that knows who they've picked, and it has to be done in person. This is the sort of thing that you certainly want to get an attorney for, because there are documents that can really be important in that if you don't have them done properly, it's like you don't have one. So just keep in mind there are differences in powers of attorney for when you explain to your family. They're both documents worth having. And different from a will, the power of attorney is used when you're living. Notice I never mentioned anything about death, because the power of attorney is used while you're living and you cannot make decisions on your behalf. That's the basic way to explain it. It is not a will, and that's completely separate, because we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the will is when you've already passed. That's when it becomes effective and really just usable. So those are some of the requirements and really the nuances when it comes to powers of attorney. When it comes to a will, I know we talked about that a little bit. The will is different in that it talks about what your wishes are. You can put some sentimental things in there. You can say how you wish to be, whether it's burial or cremation, or maybe you want to donate your body to science. All of that is part of a will. And the will are documents that you can also use to appoint guardian for your minor children. So those are important documents and ones you should really consider when it comes to explaining to your family. Everyone, no matter what socioeconomic status you have, should consider a will, because it does actually create a good foundation for a basic estate plan. So I always say, no matter what background you have, how much you have, you should at least consider that. So it's just something to keep in mind. The other thing too is we've talked a lot about estate planning in general, but kind of going back to the healthcare, there are healthcare directives where are used. So healthcare issues can become an issue at any point in your life. So you don't want to wait to have those documents in place. For example, you could have a directive that's or a HIPAA release that really tells the doctor who has access to your medical records. Do you want to be resuscitated or not? These are very important questions and documents that really have a lot of weight when life's most unexpected things happen and during those challenging moments. Now, establishing a trust is something another topic we talk about. It's another thing worth discussing at the family table here, because when you think about estate plans, the trust is a whole nother ball game, very effective, and really has more of an all-encompassing role than a will. Now, people always say, well, aren't they the same thing? Not necessarily, because the trust, what it does, it actually protects all of the assets that you have, and actually could even avoid your family going to probate. Now, depending on the amount of assets you have or your family member has, will determine whether you will have a trust or a will, or whatever is recommended, because there are different things and recommendations depending on the assets that somebody has. But as a whole, the trust really provides the family a better protection if someone is of a certain asset level, because it really allows someone to protect assets, and actually not just in the event of death, but it also is if you become incapacitated. It puts someone in line to sort of step into your shoes and follow the instructions that you left. This could be who's going to be getting your assets, who's going to be getting your homes. There's a number of ways you can customize a trust, but these are just basic explanations for what it does. So there's a lot of benefits of having a trust. One of the main ones is avoiding probate, which is what everybody wants to avoid because of its costly nature and how time consuming it is. But it is still something to consider, and it's worth discussing with family. Now, one of the things that comes up a lot is individuals that are not married and have children. We all have family members or know somebody that may have children with someone else, with a significant other, but they're not necessarily married. this is still a great conversation to have with these individuals because they have a legacy, they have children to protect, married or not. So there are documents that you can certainly offer to adults who are unmarried that are still just as valuable. A will, as I already mentioned, is always a good idea, especially for individuals that don't have any estate plan and maybe they don't have a lot of money in general to protect. That doesn't mean they won't have it, but it's at least a basic principle to put into your estate plan, regardless of your savings and what you have so far. Now, the powers of attorney that I had mentioned before are really, really good, especially when someone has a significant other. Necessarily doesn't have to necessarily be married or unmarried, but just in general, people that don't have any estate plan and have children and maybe unmarried, this is a good option for you as well because it actually puts the person in that you want in charge of your medical affairs. Same thing, you can still create a will too for your children. And you do not have to be married or anything like that to put together a will for your child. So that's one of the myths that I've come across. So I just want to make sure you're understanding that. And the HIPAA authorization, as I mentioned before, that is also a very important document that we can offer adults that are unmarried because when it comes to medical records, there's a lot of laws, especially HIPAA, that does not allow anyone to just have access to those documents. And so signing off on what's called a HIPAA authorization ahead of time is a really effective way to have your family members or spouse or significant other, life partner, whatever, to have access to those records in the event they need them. Because remember, when you can't make decisions on your behalf, having the proper paperwork allows someone to really care for you in the way that you would want. So I just want to call a timeout really quick because I just want to make sure I recap for anyone that is just joining us now. My name is attorney Stephanie Garces, owner of Garces Law Firm in Arlington Heights Law Firm in Illinois, serving parents and individuals to secure their legacy, especially preparing for the unexpected. Now, protecting your children and protecting your family is one of the topics we're talking about today, especially in light of the holidays. So we are sharing tips today on how do you bring up this conversation during the holidays, especially when estate planning and death or illness is not a super exciting topic and it could be quite sensitive. But you actually want to make sure you convey to your family that this is one of the greatest gifts you can give your family is a proper estate plan because in the event something happens that is unexpected, then these situations that are very difficult become a little easier if you have prepared the proper documents ahead of time. Now, we welcome you to join us here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock to discuss estate planning information. We talk about real estate. We talk about a lot of legal issues that people are always wondering, and it's free. So you can always share it with your family members. And I always try to use this platform to make sure that the viewers are educated on some of the stuff that we're talking about. And I really enjoy trying to make sure that everyone knows what to talk about, how to talk about it intelligently. And at the very least, you've put the seed in somebody's head that estate plan is always a good option, no matter what walk of life you've come from. So I know many of you have questions as viewers, so I want to make sure I address them. And some of the questions that we've had along the way with previous episodes and also this episode is really talking about some of the things that may be in your mind that maybe we haven't specifically addressed. So one of the questions that I get often is, do I always have to have all the documents at one time? Do I have to do them all at the same time? The short answer is not necessarily. You can always do them piecemeal, but I'm always going to recommend we do them at the same time because you hear me preach about what's unexpected or what do we know? What do we know about anything is that life is unpredictable. So my recommendation is try to get your documents done all at once at the same time, if at all possible, because it allows a couple of things. It allows all your bases to be covered. It minimizes the chances that we haven't covered something, and it also minimizes the chances that something will happen and we didn't get to that one document. So I usually recommend everything get done ahead of time at the same time. That way you don't have to make multiple visits. But of course, if you have to make multiple visits for some odd reason, we can certainly accommodate that. Now, one of the questions the viewers had is, what is the most important document to have done while my family is together? This is a great question. And I would say, at the very least, having powers of attorney and a will are really one of the most important documents. Even if you don't have the full blown estate plan, I think always having something basic like that is something you can do with family. And quite frankly, keep in mind that when your family is together, you do get to talk about these things. Like, how rare is it for family members to just come out and talk, to start talking about this out of the blue? So, having these documents and talking about how important they are to have them done when your family is together is very important. Another question that we get is, do all estate plan documents have to be signed in person with a witness? Well, that's a great question, because now there has been some changes in the law that does allow for signings to be remote. Um, Although I will say there's a lot of requirements and nuances with that. So it can be done, and yes, you do need a witness, but I would say, if it's possible, in person is always more recommended, because it's quicker. We can make sure that the signatures are done properly, and it's doable. Can it be done remotely? Absolutely, it can. There is a way to do that as well. The other question that we get every so often is, can non family members be given power of attorney rights? This is a great question as well, because people always wonder, does it have to be someone that I'm related to? The answer is no. You can really set the power of attorney to whoever you want. And that's really the beauty of these documents, is you have control. You get to choose. And actually, you can choose whoever that you want. It would be someone that I would recommend is responsible and is local, that can actually be there when they're called upon. So yes, it can be a non-family member. Another question that I get every so often is, what advice do you have for selecting a guardian for my minor children? Well, this is a great question, because having a guardian is a really important and very serious decision to make. So I would say, when it comes to picking someone, you certainly want to select someone that would be raising your children in the way that you would want, whether that is where they're located, what kind of religion or non-religion would they be pursuing, um, what are those person's goals? Are they going to be are they wanting to raise your child in the way that you would want? And do the goals align with that? These are things to think about. You want to get someone that is responsible, that someone that can really just follow your instructions. And when I say instructions, it really would be, I want my child to grow up and do this, or be raised in this way. So those are things to consider, and those are super vital conversations to have with the guardians that you may be selecting. So I think getting someone that is really in tune with what your desires are, and that you trust to actually raise your children in the way that you want, that is the way you want to select the guardian. Now, sometimes people will say, well, I want my parents to be the guardian. You can certainly pick your parents to be the guardian, but also keep in mind age. So if someone is a lot older than you and you've named them as guardian, you do have to consider if that person will outlive you or not. So there are always considerations when it comes to that, but I can certainly help you if that's what you're interested in doing, is selecting a guardian. But there's a lot of advice and a lot of tips for that, but certainly it's up to you at the end of the day. Now, one of the questions that I got from one of the viewers is, how much does it cost to create an estate plan? Well, this is always a great answer, because it could really range. And if it's something simple, it could be as little as $500. If it's something more complex, it can be closer to $3,500 or $4,500. It could be more sometimes, but it really just depends. So it really depends on the assets that you have and the goals. So it really is a wide range, because everything is not cookie cutter. Everyone has a different situation. But I would say it really ranges from that sort of range, and we're happy to discuss payments and options for fees up front. So we usually do talk about that right away, and we always work with your budget. So feel free to ask me anytime if you have any questions about that. The other question I get every so often, that I think I talk about a couple of times in this show, probably more than once, is, do I offer virtual consultations and on site visits? Absolutely. We absolutely do offer that because virtual appointments are now the new norm. So certainly we can do virtual appointments, and we can also do online, like Google Meets or Zoom if you're comfortable with that. We can do in person, like on-site visits. That's not a problem at all. We can accommodate both. And keep in mind that we will do whatever you're comfortable with. So we do have people wearing masks at the office if you are comfortable with doing that. But there really is many ways for us to have consultations with you, including virtual. So one of the things that I always talk about is, contacting me. So we have different ways of contacting myself or my office. You can always text us at 773-373-9592. You could also call. You can email. It really just depends on what you're comfortable with. I would say for us to always make sure that we can service you the best way is definitely give us a call. We speak Spanish fluently as well for anyone that needs a Spanish speaking attorney. That is something that we are big on so that we make sure that the person that we're representing is represented to the fullest so that we can make sure they understand the documents, even if English is not their first language. So that is one of the things that we always talk about is how to contact me. But I really hope in all of this you thought about how to really talk with your family during the holidays. This is such a great time. I know it's not the most exciting, and I already said that, but I do want you to maybe take away a little bit from this show so that you can actually relay this to your family. And never be shy about talking about this because I always tell my clients it's better to talk about this now than never have had the opportunity to do so. And you know what I mean by that. Sometimes we want to have these conversations with their family, but the opportunity never presents itself. So I'm telling you this holiday, please make sure to convey some of this information to your family and casually bring up, if possible, estate planning. And we're always here to help you and answer your questions. I want to thank all the viewers for watching and for all your questions as always, and for joining us this season with Pink Mike Legal Confessions. We always encourage you to come back and ask questions. If you have any feedback, I welcome it. And don't wait to reach out to us so that we can help you with your estate plan and your children as well. They're depending on you to protect them. So make sure you give us a call. As always, too, if you want to make sure to tune in, it's on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, and we cover a range of topics. So make sure you save the dates on those Pink Mike Legal Confessions. And as always, these recordings are available on YouTube and on Facebook. So thank you, friends. Thank you, viewers. And happy holidays to everyone. I hope to see you again in the new year on Pink Mike Legal Confessions.